Okay, hi team. I am currently not at team meeting, but I wanted to make sure that you guys got this reading since we split them up this week. So the one that I read was Maximal Opposition Approach to Phonological Treatment. So basically, I'll just kind of like go through what this talked about as I would in a team meeting. So the minimal pair contrast treatment, I'm sure some of you have talked about that or heard of that before. And it's one method of remediation for children, so with a phonological disorder. So for example, there would be word pairs such as pig and big, tip and dip, coat and goat, which are each minimally contrastive in terms of the voicing word in the initial position. So that's an example of a minimal pair treatment. Minimal pair treatment enhances a child's conception of sounds as phonemes. And minimal pair contrast treatment also reduces the occurrence of homonymity. Okay. In a child's productions by contrasting desired target sounds with error substituted sounds. So minimal pair contrast treatment has been widely employed by a lot of clinical researchers, adopting a lot of assessment frameworks for this distinctive feature approach. This paper in particular took a different stance and looked at the maximal opposition treatment instead of the minimal. So for example, maximal opposition would include the contrast between a voice bilabial, such as and a voiceless velar, such as k, or a contrast between a voice bilabial stop, such as b, and a voiceless fricative, such as sh. And that these are really contrastive sounds for treatment that are maximally distinct along several feature dimensions, such as manner, placement, and voiced or voiceless. So the rationale behind a maximal opposition approach is to contrast treatment to provide a child with opportunity to learn about the target phonology in his or her own unique way by filling in the gaps along these extremes of multiple feature dimensions. And so this paper was really in-depth and had a lot of information. So, but the young boy that they took as a subject, he was 4 years old, and he was given the Goldman test of articulation, and he had been referred to the, I believe, Indiana University for a diagnostic evaluation by his mom because she was not able to understand him due to the unintelligibility of his speech. So basically, what ended up happening is that 4 general observations were made about his phonological systems, and that phonemes used in the word initial positions were limited to M, B, W, and J, and of course vowels. And most morphemes were produced without word initial consonants, and a positional constraint limited production of most consonants to post-vocalic positions, and an inventory constraint excluded production of F and V in all positions. So what they ended up doing for the maximal opposition treatment is they narrowed the baseline down to 21 sounds. And in this study, the 21 sounds were charted over time. And the actual treatment involved the contrasting 5 picturable words, which were sad, mad, sat, mat, see, be, suit, boot, and sail, whale, which were done in imitative and then spontaneous phase of production. Some other stuff in here. So treatment continued in each phase until he produced word initial consonants and treatment pairs with 90% accuracy over 2 consecutive 30-minute sessions. What ended up happening in the results and discussion is... Okay, I'm almost there. Okay, so a generalization probe administered 1 week post-treatment indicated that k and g were used in word initial positions with 100% accuracy. And then of the 16 charted word initial sounds, 11 were used with 100% accuracy following treatment of only 3 sets of contrast. So basically, 4 other sounds were used in word initial positions with greater than 65% accuracy. There was the generalization data that suggested that the approach to phonological training involving building on what was already previously learned in treatment. And so this capitalization on prior learning was evident both in particular sounds and to the extent of which the child was able to generalize. So the first observation throughout the duration of treatment was that the number of consonants omitted from word initial positions decreased substantially following treatment of only 1 set of maximally opposed contrasts. The second observation was that the child overgeneralized the use of certain phonemes. So overgeneralization data provided supportive evidence and insight into at least 2 related domains. So this meant that when he said cup, it was chup, and he put the ch in front of each word in the overgeneralization data. So overgeneralizations are illustrated in the nature of restructuring in this child's sound system. So the data that implied that the child formed and changed his phonology in a conceptually based manner centered on word initialness, because in the beginning it said that he had just omitted the word initial, but now he began to overgeneralize with 1 sound at the initial beginning of each word. So in conclusion, in a minimal pair approach, a child is taught to contrast his or her own error. So an example would be a substituted or an omitted sound with the appropriate target sound. But in this case, a program of minimally paired treatment would have contrasted the null with relevant target sounds, which would be the desired productions in the initial position of the word, such as at, sat, eat, seat, ink, sink. With this approach, the selection of sounds for treatment is based on the child's phonemic errors relative to the target. And so in the maximal opposition approach, a child is taught to contrast target sounds that are not used appropriately with those that are currently used in his or her phonological system. So, for example, the sad, mad, see, be, say, a will. And then with this approach, the selection of treatment sounds is based on occurrences and non-occurrences in the child's phonological system. So another important research question remains to be asked is whether such variations in the format of contrast treatment will result in empirical differences among the treatment approaches. So the paper went into an example of contrast treatment, if they may influence the nature, extent, and type of generalization that a child will display following treatment. So children with inconsistent errors and or variable productions may also be well suited for a maximal opposition approach that gives several feature dimensions. I really enjoyed this article, as I think some of us do have clients with phonological goals or articulation goals, and a couple of my clients had a minimal pairs approach. But I think that this is just nice to have in your repertoire of knowledge, especially if you're going to be working in a school or anything like that. So it's a very in-depth article, so if anyone wants to read it, I would highly recommend it. But anyway, have a great weekend. Okay, bye.